Hey guys, welcome to the Someday Life podcast. I'm your host, Justin Christensen. Look guys, this next episode I'm about to share with you is really cool. My guest has dedicated his career to inspiring people, helping them to discover and capitalize on their personal strengths. And I had a blast talking with this individual. And if you're a sports fan, particularly basketball, I think you're going to really enjoy it. But first, couple things. If you do me a favor, make sure you hit subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, make sure you follow the podcast on Instagram and Facebook at Someday Life Podcast. I have some cool content that I share over there all the time, and it's nice to kind of interact with my followers a lot more that way. So before we get started, I do want to mention my sponsor of this episode, and that is All Shine Cleaning Services. Listen, guys, they offer residential and commercial carpet cleaning, pet urine restoration, dryer vent cleaning, tile and grout, along with upholstery cleaning to Southeast Idaho. So if your someday list, if you have cleaning your house or doing the real dirty detailed cleaning, if that's on your someday list, you need to give All Shine Cleaning Services a call. I've used them several times. They're fantastic. Their customer satisfaction along with quality and dependability are key to their clients. So they're always striving to provide the best overall carpet cleaning East Idaho has to offer, and they've done a phenomenal job with my house and with our other houses in the past. So if you want the best, I would say call the best at 208-403-7107, or you can just schedule an appointment online at allshine-idaho.com. All right, guys, let's get into our next episode. My guest is going to be Coach Pat Sullivan. Coach Pat, as I like to call him, he has coached NCAA basketball for 34 years. He has 44 years of total coaching experience. He's an author of 2 incredible books, which I suggest that you check out. The first one is Attitude, the Cornerstone of Leadership. And the second newest book that he's released is Team Building from the Bench to the Boardroom. This gentleman has a lot of great stories to share. He is a very wise individual, and he's had some crazy experiences with coaching, and he's found ways to take his coaching experience and share them with us through books and through his website and his blogs. He's a motivational speaker. He speaks with corporations throughout the country. So you want to make sure you check out CoachPatSullivan.com to get some more details. I hope everybody's having a great day. Thank you so much for all your support. Here's the episode. All right, Coach. So we are live right now. How's the weather over there? Did you guys get hit with that? I saw Texas really got hit hard and kind of the middle of the country, but you're over in the Chicago area. Did you guys get some cold weather over there?
Justin, believe it or not, all through from November till February, whatever it was, we never had one day below zero. And we had 2 inches of snow cumulatively. And then like a week ago, we ended up with 15 inches of snow, and it was below zero like 5 days in a row.
Brutal. It just came all at once, huh?
Oh, it sure did. And when it hit, it hit.
Yeah. Well, I was out. I spoke to you earlier last week, and I was telling you about how I helped my stepdad out on a ranch and things like that. And we were out feeding cows this morning, and when I pulled into the ranch, my truck said it was 5 degrees, and I'm like, oh, that's freezing cold. And then when I got out, it had about a 20-mile-an-hour east wind. And so it was like frostbite cold this morning. And I just out there feeding cows.
It's the wind that kills you, isn't it? You can almost handle the 5 below, but when that wind kicks in, it's awful.
Yeah, it's horrible. Horrible. Well, Coach, let's I want to get touching base on some of the books that you've wrote. You have I think it's the newest book, right? Team Building from the Bench to the Boardroom. Is that the newest one?
It is. Yes.
Okay. And then the one before that was Attitude, the Cornerstone of Leadership, right? That you did about 2013, something like that?
Perfect. Yep. In 2013.
Awesome. Awesome. Which one's been your favorite one to write?
Honest to God, well, I think team building was a little bit easier because I had been through the process. So, and when you do a book, I didn't know anything about publishing, self-publishing. I didn't know anything about it, still don't. But that's what's unbelievable, Justin. It's one thing to write a book, but you have to put as much effort into getting it published, even if you self-publish, which I did. So that was really a tremendous learning process for me.
Yeah, I bet that was a challenge. And that's kind of cool though to hear that, because this is kind of what the podcast is about, is kind of overcoming challenges, to accomplish something that you want to do. And that task put in front of a lot of people, that might deter them from wanting to get their written stuff out there. So that's really cool.
Yeah, I swear to God, the easier of the two would have been the writing, because you were talking about things that you believed in, and once you got into a flow, at least what I found, Justin, then you pretty much can stay in that flow.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. So what encouraged you to, just kind of give my audience a little bit of backstory of, I know you've been coaching. It's been you coached for 44 years, right?
I did.
And then now you've kind of transitioned into, being an author and a motivational speaker. So if you can kind of give a little bit of backstory of how that came about, how you got into coaching, and kind of how it's transitioned to what you do now.
Well, I know you're a football player.
Yeah.
So what happened believe it or not, my senior year of high school, the seniors would play the faculty in a basketball game. They wouldn't allow the basketball players to play. So the football guys asked me to coach them. And honest to God, that's when I got my first taste of coaching, and I really loved it. And then Justin, I went on, I think we talked a little bit about this before. I was really blessed. Now I'm prejudiced, but I played for and coached with the greatest coach in America. Gordy Gillespie whom I pitched for in college, played basketball for. Gordy is the second winningest coach in the history of college baseball. When the NAIA, you're familiar with the NAIA, named the coach of the century, not the year, not the decade, the century.
100 years.
100 years, they named Gordy. And then how about this, Justin? One year, Gordy's teams won 3 national baseball championships in a row.
Wow.
In the fall of those years, his football team at Joliet Catholic High School won 4 straight state championships. During that run, at one point, they were 51-1.
Oh my gosh.
And Gordy, in college, he played for the Hall of Fame coach, Ray Meyer, at DePaul University. And only the old timers, your audience would have no idea this.
YouTube them.
In the old days, before there ever was the Chicago Bulls, they had college doubleheaders, and Kentucky and Oklahoma, all the great teams in the country would come into Chicago. And they would get 19,000 people at the stadium for those doubleheaders. And of course, Gordy played in those. He was a terrific coach in all 3 sports. And I'll leave it with this. His teams, when I've had the opportunity to introduce them, and we worked together for 25 years, but his teams won 2,402 games.
Wow.
Because, in baseball, as you know, you play a lot of games. But still, who among us has seen 2,402 games, let alone won them?
That is amazing. So is that what made you get into coaching?
Yes. Then when I had the chance to play for Gordy, the impact that he had on his players, and we estimated, Justin, I got to add one more thing. He finished coaching college baseball at 87 years young.
Wow.
87 years old. He coached college baseball for 59 years. And I swear, because I played for him, obviously, when he was in his late 30s, his impact on the people whom he was coaching was no different at 87 than it was at 37. Probably one of the most remarkable men I've ever met. And I should add this to give you another perspective. I spent 8 years working for McGregor Education, traveling the country, directing basketball clinics. So in that capacity, I had the unbelievable opportunities to work with UCLA's John Wooden, North Carolina's Dean Smith, Bobby Knight from Indiana, all those fellas. And then I'd come back home to little old Joliet, and I'd say, Gord doesn't have to take a back seat to any of those guys. He was right there with them. That's how good he was.
That's
so
amazing.
That encouraged me to get into coaching and try to maybe help a kid along the way.
Absolutely. So you coached at the collegiate level, correct?
I coached 10 years at the high school level. And then actually when Gordy left the university where I played to come to another university, he asked if I would come with him. And then we were together for 25 years at the University of St. Francis in Joliet, Illinois. We're about 35 miles southwest of Chicago. And all the leagues we played in, Justin, were Chicago leagues.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you've had some chance to be around some of the top players on the planet, right? Some NBA players and things like that. I mean, because you guys used to run some camps and stuff a lot, right?
We used to run camps for the Milwaukee Bucks. And so we would get a lot of the Bucks players, from Quinn Buckner to John McClendon to a number of them. Carter, what was his first name? His brother was the great receiver in football.
Chris Carter was his brother.
Chris Carter. His brother, his first name eludes me, but so how about that for a family?
Wow.
And an NBA player from the same family. But yeah, we worked with some of and then we did clinics where we would have, Jerry Sloan, who obviously was one of the best coaches in the history of the of the NBA, and just a tremendous person. So we were lucky.
Yeah, I'm over here in Idaho, right? And so I went down to some Jazz games. I'm a Lakers fan, and my son is a Lakers fan. So anytime the Lakers come into town down to Utah, we just make the 3-hour drive and go watch them play the Jazz. But I got to see Jerry Sloan.
We had one of the little kids, the camps that go from like 5th grade to high school, senior year in high school. And when Jerry was speaking for us at one of them, one of the kids said, when you go for a loose ball and there's a big pile up, what happens there? He said, well, once I bit a guy's arm off. And the kids just went crazy. And here's another thing I'll tell you about Jerry Sloan. He would talk about the NBA, then he'd quickly do questions and answers on the NBA with the kids. This is when he was a player. And then he would pick one of the counselors and play him one-on-one. So now we're working a camp, and Jerry says, and I had to be direct, and he said, what would you want me to do? I said, like always, if you'll talk to the kids about the NBA, they get all excited about hearing it. And then if you'd play one of the counselors one-on-one. Justin, as God's my judge, he said, yeah, I'm getting knee surgery next week. So I may as well play. I said, time out. Just talk to the kids about the NBA. We're not playing anyone. But he would have. That's how incredible a man he was.
Yeah. That's really cool. That's really cool. Well, Coach, one of the big reasons I wanted to have you come on the podcast is just to share some knowledge about leadership and attitude. You're obviously an expert in this field, and I know that's a big part of what the team building from the bench to the boardroom. And I know you believe a lot of kind of what what we learn in coaching, and I included we because, you know, I do coaching too as well, definitely not at your level by any means, but there's a lot of similarities that transition to business and running organizations, and, you know, whether that's a startup company with just a handful of employees to a corporation. What is your philosophy on attitude and leadership?
Well, you know what, I had, for about 25 years, Justin, I had given a presentation on attitude and leadership. And for the presentation, I used the word attitude as an acronym, gave each letter of the word a characteristic that might make for a quality leader. And the genesis of the book was a couple of my players said, why don't you write a book on that? You know, now that you're retired, you've got the time. So that's how the book began. And real quick, the acronym words were, number one, attitude. And I talked to about the fact, does one person's attitude make a difference? And of course, I believe it does. Then we went to team, when again, from your playing and coaching career, I think you'll appreciate these things. Then I felt an important thing for a leader is you're leading a team, so you better work at teamwork. Then the next T is you have to be tough because you're going to be criticized when you're a leader. And then on intelligence, Justin, I hit two concepts that I always felt were the two characteristics of the intelligent people whom I was blessed to work with. Number one, they were great listeners. And number two, they persevered to their core values, especially during the tough times. And then the third T is thank you. In fact, it was a book in corporate America, In Search of Excellence, where one of the main tenets of the book was the author said that the top people in companies often fail to come down to the people like the truck drivers, the people working the assembly line, the secretaries, and say to them the third T, hey, thank you. Thank you for all you're doing. And then the letter U I had stand for the word you. And again, I'm an old man now, Justin. So in our day, they kind of made you real responsible for your own actions. And I still feel the only one responsible, you know this from the ranch, for your body of work is you. You can make all the excuses you want, but either you're going to get it done or you're not. The D is for determination. And that's where I had heard this working in Salt Lake City, actually at a clinic. And one of the coaches said, your FQ is more important than your IQ. And we all sat there, well, what's your FQ? Your failure quotient. How often can you fail at something and have the resiliency to get back up? And as you know, that's a big part of athletics. We all fail constantly. And finally, the E was for effort. And I came to believe this, Justin, primarily from my coaching. A lot of kids could give you a good effort on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. But for whatever reason, they couldn't reach down and find that same effort Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. So I came to this conclusion. The difference between a good athlete and a great athlete, a good leader and a great leader, is not effort, it's consistency of effort. The great ones, none of us have our A game every day, but the great ones can reach down and find the best effort that they have that day. And they do that consistently. So that was pretty much the acronym and a synopsis of the book.
That's awesome. I love those acronyms on those. I agree with you 100%. You know, when I think about like times where I failed or I speak with other people and they talk about failure with me, I think what sets a lot of people apart is like, we know that that's a constant, like the sun coming up and going down every day.
Right.
For everybody on the planet. And then there's those that are able to have the more consistency of digging a little bit deeper and pushing through some of the pain or adversity that I think a lot of us, pretty much everybody on the planet, right, deals with at some point in our life.
Sure we do.
What do you think it is that allows individuals to do that? Do you think they're just wired differently? Do they do like the small things? They don't really look for huge victories, but they look for like really small wins when they're at their lowest. I mean, what do you think keeps people going and allowing them to kind of push to that next level?
Well, I love what you just said about the little things. John Wooden had a great point. He said, as a coach, if you take care of the little things, the big things take care of themselves. And you're so right. I've coached some All-Americans, of course. The great players that I've coached take care of the little things, and they work on the little things. But they also, I remember listening to Joe Paterno. Of course, it's
the late Penn State coach.
Penn State coach, and I really felt badly about that whole thing. But at any rate, one of the things he said was the great football players, and I can transition that to basketball. When they tie up their shoes and they walk across the line for practice, the only important thing in their life is that practice. They're going to give everything they got every day at practice. Now, then he would say, now when they walk across the line after practice, certainly things like their families, their spirituality, those things are more important than the game. But for those 2 hours of practice, the great ones can have that kind of mindset. And it is a mindset. I really believe that. It's a mindset. And the guys who have it, they're such a pleasure to coach. Mm-hmm. Jerry Sloan had it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
I've met, just on the youth side of stuff, right now I'm coaching a 4th grade basketball team. We're getting ready to go to one of the top competitions in Idaho, where it takes kind of the top athletes in their age group kind of meet, and we go head to head in this tournament. So that's coming up this weekend. And it's amazing when you have a lot of athletes on your team. But what amazes me more is the mindset in each individual kid. And that's where that's really where I like to kind of nerd out or geek out, is like trying to get inside the head of these young kids. I mean, they're 10 years old, and it's funny because they emulate so much of what they see on TV, whether it's college ball or NBA ball, and just trying to teach them the fundamentals. And I think the big thing when it comes to coaching, if you want to be successful, is being able to explain. And I think this goes into business as well. When you have employees, is you need to explain why we do something, not tell them to do something, explain why we do this. And I think when you explain the why, then it allows them to process that information, and it kind of makes it their own decision. And once they can buy into like their own decision, then they'll want to do it more versus being told to just do something. Because then there's kind of that natural little kid inside of them is like, somebody told me to do something, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah. Well, you hit it right on the head. People would ask me, you're a fossil. You've coached a long time. And they would say, have you noticed a difference in the kids? And I said exactly what you said. One difference. When I first started coaching, you could tell a kid, do this. He did it. And if he didn't do it, you could get on him. And if you gave him a hard time and he went home, his parents gave him a harder time for not doing it. And then the only change that I saw among the kids, people say the kids today won't work as hard as we did. I don't believe that. I do not believe that. They work just as hard as we ever did, with one difference. They want you to explain why we're doing something, and they will question you on that. And my perspective as a coach was, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
I should know why I'm teaching this particular fundamental. When I'm telling the kids in dribbling, you have to change pace and keep the ball below your knee, I better know why I'm telling them that, you know? And so I thought the fact that they will ask why is a good thing. So we did exactly what you did, or you are doing. We taught the why before the what
Mm-hmm.
in everything we taught. Here's our press offense. Okay. What's our objective? Well, our objective is to try to score at the other end. We don't want to be passive against the press. We want to be aggressive because you meet aggression with aggression. But you explain that before we ever would give the kids our alignment, the fact that every time you have the ball against the press, we're going to give you 3 passing lanes. So there's no need to panic. You're always going to have 3. So things like that, you told them, this is what we're looking to do. And we've, even in the basketball booklets that we wrote, always we told the objective before we showed what we were doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, cool. I'm glad I'm doing something right there.
You sure are.
Because it's a learning process. And then, you have to deal with, when you say tough for one of the T's in attitude, if you're going to be a leader, whether it's in business or coaching or, just a mentor to a group of people, you need to be prepared for some criticism, even because when you're coaching a game, you can hear when parents disagree with something or, your opposition is, constantly challenging you, and there's kind of a chess game. So, I let my kids understand that, I can't go out there and make the shots or layups or play defense. That's what you guys do. I'm actually, as a coach, I have my own basketball game going on in my head.
Sure.
Whether it's,
Sure.
when to use my timeouts, when to call a set play or run motion, or, what position do I need to have the ball in here on the side out, and, just time management and things like that. So it's, this is why I'm a huge believer in having really good assistants and having assistant managers and general managers, because a lot of times, in big corporations, for example, right now I work for a Fortune 100 company, and there's a lot of rungs on that ladder,
Yeah.
And so I appreciate it a lot when you say that, if somebody higher up on that ladder can come down and say thank you to the people that are to the frontline soldiers, there's so much appreciation there from your employees. And I think it was what's his name? Something Branson. I think he owns T-Mobile or Virgin Mobile or something. And there's a famous quote that he says, if you take care of your employees, they'll take care of your customers. But you got to take care of your employees first.
And how about it, Justin? When you do that, they go the extra mile.
Mm-hmm.
When tough times come up, you don't have to ask them, hey, we really need a little more help here. They're just going to do it because they know you. In fact, in my book, I think you'll like this on team building. I give 20 characteristics that I think are important, or concepts, I should say, in building a team. And you know what the first one is? Caring. Caring. The great ones care about the people in their employee. All right, Greg Popovich, right? Maybe the best coach in all of the NBA.
Yeah.
We're doing a clinic in Chicago. One of our kids comes down on his ankle badly, really sprained it very badly, Justin. So now Popovich didn't know us from Adam. I knew some of the other coaches, from my other work, but I didn't know Greg at all. How about this? Here's a famous NBA coach having kids demonstrate for him from a college he never heard of. 2 weeks after the clinic, I get a call. It's Greg Popovich. Can I get the name of that kid who got hurt during my talk and his telephone number? I want to call him and see how he's doing. Well, when he called our player, naturally our player thought it was a prank call. He didn't believe it was, Greg Popovich calling him. Then he said this, Justin, how about when we play the Bulls, why don't you bring the team up as our guests? And after the ball game, he came up, he shook hands with every player. Now that's a guy who cared about people he had never seen before, probably never will see again, but caring. It goes, I always cheer for Greg Popovich, as do the players.
Well, that turns my perspective a little bit for him, because he kind of comes off as a hard ass a little bit.
Oh yeah. Okay, I got one even better than that. Now, if you want to talk the hardest ass of all the hard asses, let's talk about Bob Knight. Okay.
Yeah.
We used to have these one-man clinics. So in the only one speaker, Justin, for the whole clinic. So now Bob Knight is doing the clinic. Our kids are going to demonstrate for him. So we get there Saturday morning. We're going to be in the gym for 7 hours. And Knight is going to go for 6 of those 7 hours, along with an older coach named Pete Newell. So 800 coaches were at the clinic. Now, if you're a freshman or a senior at St. Francis, and you walk into that venue, and you have to demonstrate for Bob Knight, and you've seen Bob Knight be pretty rough on players. Then you walk in, and my God, you see 800 coaches. You're going to be a little nervous, okay? The first drill that Knight gave our kids to demonstrate, they totally messed it up. It was a disaster. It couldn't have been any worse. Now watch this. The coaches laughed at our players. Knight went to the middle of the gym. He looked at those 800 coaches. He says, coaches, here's what we're going to do. He said, if I hear any more laughter, I'm going to get 10 of you guys. You're going to come down here. You're going to demonstrate. And the kids are going to sit in the front row and laugh their ass off at you. You never heard 800 guys get so quiet.
Oh man, and that I believe that. I mean, that guy is intimidating.
Oh, those coaches shut up. I'm telling you, there was a specter of a laugh for 7 hours. Yeah,
Holy
but caring is such a big thing, isn't it? You have to care about the people in your charge, period.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's where, I know that's one of my strengths with coaching, is that
Yes.
I'm able to, maybe it comes from my sales career, maybe it comes from, I don't know where it comes from, but it's just a natural thing for me to get on the kids' level. I try not to ever talk down to them, and I try to develop a friendship with them, because it's kind of like a rapport building process. If you're trying to negotiate a deal, and if you're selling something or something, like you want to show that you care, you want to get to know that person. And I think once you get that buy-in, then that's when you can really lead them, because they understand that I have their back, that I'll take arrows for them, and we'll get through this together. And they seem to just buy in more. So they kind of get buddy with me, but to the point where, I got to keep that line between coach and friend, kind of like boss and employee,
Sure.
I mean, that's a whole different conversation on how to do that in a strategic way. But yeah, I agree with everything you say.
Well, Justin, just a part of that is, I used to tell coaches at clinics, you have to develop a philosophy of criticism. You have to critique the player when he's not doing something correctly. So you got to think about how you're going to do that. And from your athletic career, well, let me start with this. The 1 Minute Manager book with Ken Blanchard and Johnson. They say you critique the action, not the person.
Mm-hmm.
Now, both you and I know there's coaches who don't believe that. They think if they get on you as a person, that's going to make you more motivated to do well. I don't believe that. I never believed that. And I played for a guy like that. Constantly, he was criticizing your personhood. Then when I played for Gordy Gillespie, when Gordy yelled at you, by God, you knew you were yelled at, but it was only about the action, not the person.
Mhm.
Even in his book, Instant Replay, Jerry Kramer says this about Vince Lombardi. Who was ever tougher than the Green Bay Packer coach, Vince Lombardi? Kramer said that Lombardi could get on you pretty tough in practice. But when you left the practice, he'd put his arm around you and say, one day you're going to be the best guard in the NFL. And I always liked the concept of the sandwich theory. You know, you can't do this all the time, but you can do it some of the time, where I sandwich my critique between two positive things. So I may say to my point guard, come here, Joe. Joe, you know you're a good player. Now, why would you make the difficult pass instead of swinging the ball, making the easier pass and keep our offense and the defense moving? Now get out there and show everybody why you're an all-conference player. So hopefully you heard he was a good player. He was an all-conference player. But I don't want him making the difficult pass. And then, of course, if he does, then we use the great equalizer, the bench.
No kidding. You got to sit over here.
Yeah.
I I agree with you. We could go on and on with coaching stories. Coach, you've done a lot of, I know you were telling me earlier when we touched base last week, like you've spoke at Notre Dame and you've given speeches to like IBM executives and things like that, correct?
Mm-hmm, I have.
How did that speech at Notre Dame go about? Because we were kind of talking about Rudy, and I think a lot of people listening or watching this video, they've seen the movie Rudy. You know, they remember Notre Dame and they remember that great story. But you actually have some connections there with Rudy and his family, correct?
I talked to Rudy yesterday, so I sure do. There's 14 children or siblings in Rudy's family. 7 boys, 7 girls. And I probably coached and or taught about 7 or 8 of them, Justin. And his mom, Betty and Dan, his parents, were among the most extraordinary parents that I've ever met. It's just a great family. And 5 of the boys are wrestling coaches or were wrestling coaches. Now, I'm sure you're familiar with the great Dan Gable.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Okay, we used to do this sports night for the people in our city as a fundraiser for the university. And watch how lucky we were, Justin. Some of our speakers were John Wooden, Al McGuire, Paul Horning, Bart Starr, Mike Ditka, and I could go on. And Dan Gable was one of them. So the Rudigers, the 5 of them would get together for a match, and they had the Rudiger Cup. So whichever team won the match was going to get the cup. So they brought the cup that night, and it looked like something that people had thrown junk into for 35 years. It was rusty, and it was perfect for the Rudigers, no gold tarnished, cup for those guys. And Dan Gable loved it. He just thought that Rudiger Cup was, but Rudy will always be an inspiration to me, because if he were talking to you and I right now, he'd tell us, and this is true, he graduated 3rd in his high school class, 3rd from the bottom. So can you imagine being told from 1st grade to your senior year in high school, and this is what the teachers told him, because there was no political correctness in our day: you're too stupid to learn. Imagine hearing that for 12 years of your education. Then Rudy, in fact, I had made the first call for him to get to Holy Cross Community College, which is right across the street from Notre Dame. The Holy Cross brothers had proper diagnostic testing, which they didn't have in the grammar schools and high schools that Rudy was at. That's when they found out he had dyslexia.
Well, that'd make a difference.
Isn't that so? He'll tell you that was the best day of his life, because now he knew that he wasn't stupid. There was a reason why learning came so difficultly for him. And I'll guarantee you this, Justin, all those teachers that told Rudy he was stupid, they ain't living in a house like his.
No.
No, he's got a beautiful place right outside of Vegas in Henderson. But he is an inspiration. And I'll finish with this. The two things that he tells people when he gives his presentations are, don't give up on your dreams, and don't let anybody tell you you're dumb. Pretty good message.
Oh, that's a great message.
Yes.
So is that how, was it like at Notre Dame when you did that speech, was that a commencement speech of some kind, or?
No, they have a thing you'd really like. They call it, they take it from the football thing. When the Notre Dame football players come out, they hit a sign that says "Play like a champion."
Yep.
And each player hits that. Well, the two professors there developed a program which they were able to title "Play Like a Champion." And it's really a terrific program because it's all on what you're doing. It's all on youth sport. And they're giving insights from people all over the world on what might be some of the best ways to deal with youth sport. So the people running it found out about my attitude book. And that was how that happened. They asked me if I could come, and they have about a couple hundred people who literally come from all over the world, coaches, administrators, people who work with youth. And it's a terrific program. And I was honored to be a very minor part of it, but to be a part of it.
That's awesome. Well, Coach, I was going to get your perspective on this, and I don't know, I think you could probably tie it into leadership and attitude. The last few years have been quite challenging, on society and our country. You see everything that goes on in the news and, presidential election, and it just really feels like we're really divided. And for some reason, I think about coaching and I think about like leadership and attitude, because you're kind of, I'm sure there's a ton of people that disagree with this, but you're kind of a coach as the president of the United States. You're kind of a coach of a ginormous team with a lot of moving parts.
You are.
And you've been around long enough to see, different generations and see a lot of heartache in our country, but also see a lot of success and a lot of perseverance and things like that. What are your thoughts on just everything that's going on now? And I guess what's the positive side of it that you see? Maybe a silver lining that maybe we can all, kind of the younger generation, that we can maybe put our heads together and kind of fight together as a team.
I think your generation will like this. A bottle of scotch. Okay.
Yeah.
The best political thing that happened in our country was when Ronald Reagan was president and Tip O'Neill was speaker. They came from complete diverse philosophies of politics. So you know what they do? Justin, they'd get a bottle of scotch and they'd sit down and they'd talk. So I think the politicians today need a bottle of scotch and sit down, and for God's sakes, that old expression, we can disagree without being disagreeable.
Yeah.
And then I love this about listening. Listening is respect. When I respect you, I listen. And when did I have all the answers? My Lord, none of us have all the answers. What's so hard about sitting down and listening instead of allowing ourselves to get so polarized? I'm deeply disappointed in our politicians today. And I just don't think it has to be that way. For gosh sake, sit down and listen. We do that as a coach, don't we?
Mm-hmm.
when kids have things that they want to share with us, of course we listen to them, you know.
Yeah, it's just amazing. I mean, there's so many, I don't know. I mean, politics is always, it's such a disagreement argument all the time, but I think a lot of people can agree on that we have to have some, some bipartisanship. You got to have people
yes,
coming together and reaching their hands out. And I feel like in where we're at today is there's so many big influencers and lobbyists and special interest groups that I think everybody goes into certain positions with the best intent to really do good and really make a difference. But then these outside things just slowly pull them apart. And then they influence our leaders, and our leaders, it's almost rare. Like you're almost an asshole if you are like, stick to your morals and you stick to your standards. Like you're almost like outspoken because it's not going with the flow of everything else.
yes. And if I vote against my party and with my conscience and my moral platform, what I believe in, I'm ostracized. And that doesn't make, to me, that doesn't make any sense. And that's another great phase of coaching that that you don't have all the answers. We had to beat a certain team to get to the national championship. I had 3 assistant coaches, part-time, Justin, but 3 assistants. Of the 4 of us, I would say this one guy, not his fault, he had the least experience, and among the 4 coaches, he would be the least knowledgeable. Now, we had to beat a certain team to get to the national tournament. He came up with an idea to me a couple days before we were to play him. And in my Irish stubborn and stupidness, I said, Mike, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So I get home that night and I think, you know what? He might be right. So the reason we beat them and got to the national tournament was his idea. I'm the head coach. I never would have thought of it. The other 2 guys working with me they were every bit as smart as I may or may not be. They were sharp basketball guys. And he had the idea to change the whole thing. So, how do you know where the best idea is going to come from? You talked about working in the trenches. I don't know anything about ranching, but I thought the guys who work on the ranch in the trenches, they very well may have an idea or 2 that the boss hadn't thought of. That could make the work more productive, yeah.
Well, I think that's where being a better leader comes into play, is when you're listening to the feedback of the guys on the ground, because they're seeing it firsthand, and like, an architect can show you how, they can put a house on a plan, a blueprint together for you, but there's no way they could walk out to a cement foundation and construct that thing.
That's right.
The architect is probably, has a college degree, a lot of education certificates behind him. So they all have their roles that they play. So, this guy might be more academically, further along, but the tradesmen are the one that actually build that structure up. But without the architect's, mind and engineering to make sure that thing will stand. So it takes this ginormous team effort to make this beautiful thing. And, I think that's key to any business. I'm an insurance agent now. So I run an insurance agency that's, I've been doing that for 12 years, and the turnover rate is so high,
Yes.
and it's a hard profession to do for a long time, to be really good at. But the only way that I've been able to do that is because of my mentality when I was younger, working on the ranch, of being able to, okay, something's broke, we got to fix it. And you just don't go inside the house until that's fixed, whether it's with wire and the baling twine or duct tape or whatever. Like, you solve the issue and then you move on. And that's literally the life of like a farmer or a rancher. They'll really understand that when I'm saying this. And it's kind of a simplistic mindset, but it's not really. It's just when you say, well, if you could just figure it out and keep going, I think that's pretty much what life is, right? For us all daily is you're faced with this constant storm of problems. In fact, I looked across my table here and I have this buffalo or bison, depending on what you want to call it. I read this really, really cool book last year. And this gentleman had shared this mantra of be the bison. And the reason why he said that is because when a storm comes in, bison will turn towards the storm and start traveling its direction. So they'll meet the storm head on. And the idea is because they'll get through the storm quicker. Whereas their close, counterparts like cattle, what they do is cattle will herd up and they all herd together, and then they sit and that storm just pounds on them and pounds on them and pounds on them. Or they'll start walking the same way the storm's going, and then they just stay in the storm longer. And I don't know, that just really resonated with me. I'm like, you know what? I need to be the bison more in my life, because that's what's gotten me to this point. And I want people to understand that is we're always faced with these storms constantly, but if you don't meet them head on and the willingness to get through them, then you turn kind of your smaller problems or your smaller storms, if you will, into like a ginormous issue when it's really not. If you would have just took immediate action, you could actually took that head on, get through it quicker, or you could be the cattle and just sit in it longer, and then it becomes a really, really big issue.
Well, Einstein had I thought one of the great comments when he said, genius is taking a complex idea and making it simple, right? Let's not, make everything, let's get down to the nitty gritty, like the bison. I'm going to walk through simple, and then I can relate to your ranch a little bit in that in my collegiate summers, I worked hot tar roofing, I worked ironworking, I worked construction. And when you talked about architects, here were some architects from the University of Illinois that I really respected. The two actually brothers with whom I worked in ironworking were brilliant guys. And do you know, Justin, the architects would come onto the job where we were working with their renderings, the drawings, and they would say to these two ironworker guys, will this work? I really respected those architects. They and Andy and Sonny, they knew. They had been on the job for 30, 35 years. They knew what worked and what didn't work. So it was good to see the academician come to the practitioner and let's work this together.
Yeah, it makes them feel like they're a part of it too, that they're not beneath anybody. You're in it together. And then it's kind of like it's weird because then everybody wants to succeed. I think, like managers, I've done sales managing before and things. And if you want to get your employees or your salespeople to buy into you, you need to include them you need to be on the same level. You know what I mean? You cannot be perceived to be like above them. Yes, you kind of make the final decision, but you need all those small decisions to be made by your employees in order for you to make the big decision. And so
I've worked with both sides of that. I've worked with leaders who knew everything. And for me to say I work with them is a misnomer. Nobody could work with them. They had all the answers. Then I work with leaders who weren't afraid, Justin, to come in, a situation comes up and they're not afraid to say, hey, I don't know where we go with this, but they've called in their principal people. Let's put our heads together and see if we can find the best solution. I found the ones who weren't afraid to say, I'm not sure where we go, the most secure and the strongest leaders that I've ever worked with. Yep. Not the guy who dictate and yeah.
Yeah, those four, I think, what do you think? Those 4 words, if you start using those more in your business, around your employees, around your general managers and your managers, your HR people, your receptionist. You know, if you want to be a good leader and you really want to get some buy-in with people, start saying those 4 words. What do you think?
That's right. And
Because
buy
you'd be
into the
amazed.
premise that you never know. There's no job too small. You never know where the best idea is going to come from.
That's true.
So you buy in to that premise, then you're going to go to people and say, hey, where do you think we should go with this? I couldn't agree more. I agree 100% with you. Yep.
Coach, I want to jump over before we wrap up. My listeners, they really, you know, I talk a lot about adversity and, you know, just challenging things. That's the idea, the kind of the premise of the podcast is, I don't want it to be all about all these good things. I like the backstory. I like the challenge, see people. I want people to understand that we all have ginormous challenges, and we've all kind of, what you see, you know, you kind of take it at face value, but you don't understand how or why they became who that person is. You know, like when you see, does that make sense? So like when you see like celebrities or gurus on the internet and, you know, these ginormous figures, you just think that, I think a lot of people think, well, that must be easy, it must be nice. You know, they just got there to that point, but they don't see all this hard work. And so is there something that comes to mind? I know I didn't kind of talk to you about this before, but is there something that comes to mind that was like really challenging for you to overcome in your life, where it just kind of smacked you upside the head? You're like, wow, I wasn't expecting that. And it really took you down to a dark place and you came up out of it. Is there anything that comes to mind?
Sure. I took the job at the University of St. Francis. Now get ready, Justin. We didn't have a gym. We didn't have a gym. We played in an armory for 11 years. And the first time I walked into the armory, tanks and trucks were on the floor that we were going to play on.
So is it like is it a warehouse?
Like a
I've heard of the word, but I'm just picturing
where
tanks
soldiers. Yeah, it is where soldiers work. It's like a big barn. And and the college, we had to put money into the armory, you know, to make it look like a gym. A local high school had gotten automated bleachers, so we took the bleachers that you had to push in and out. So we pushed them in and out for 11 years. So we had a lot of challenges there. But here's where I was so proud. And one of the biggest problems, I said one day to a kid named Larry Fitzgerald, I said, Fitz, catch the ball. Catch the ball. He says, Coach, I can't. My hands are freezing. We couldn't get the heat, Justin. The heat would start to come down and it'd go right back up and out the windows. So we were practicing. We put the thermometer in there. We were practicing in 54-degree weather, basketball practice. And you know, it was the best thing about it. I never heard a kid complain.
Really?
So they took that adversity and they said, we're gonna work through this. Now, then when we did get a gym after 11 years on campus, I don't think that the kids coming in then really appreciated what their predecessors had been through. And if I have to pick what possibly could be the best team that I ever coached, we won like 19 of our last 20 or 21 games. They played in the armory. Wow. They were just good players, very good players, not good players, very good players who were willing to sacrifice. So that was a challenge, but you know, I'm sure I could think of, well, even as the athletic chair, our college was so small that every one of our facilities for tennis, for soccer, for football, for volleyball was able to practice in the gym. Everybody else, all our facilities were off campus. So, you know, you had to coordinate all that. But St. Francis at one point, when our whole conference, 8 teams, had been to 90 NAI national championships, St. Francis had been to 60 of them.
Whoa.
Yes. We just got kids, and that's what we say before. The kids haven't changed. The kids have not changed. You treat them right. You try to be the best mentor you can be. Learn the game as best you can, and they're going to get it done.
Yeah, you can believe in them to do it, right?
That's right. In fact, last thought on that one, I just read this morning where this guy said, you know, when Tom Brady came to us, to the Buccaneers this year, he said, it wasn't the fact that he was Tom Brady and he could throw these passes and all that. He said it was his mindset. We had the same players as we had the year before when we went 7-9.
Mm-hmm.
But Brady came in and said, we will win. We're gonna make this happen. And then they sure did.
It's amazing how one person like that can come in and change a culture overnight like that.
Yeah, without question. And that's why when we said, does one person's attitude make a difference? Yeah, it sure does.
It absolutely does. Well,
Yes.
I think that's a good place to end, actually. That kind of came full circle for us. So, Coach, can we get, I'm trying to remember, I thought because I was looking at buying your book because I want to read it. I haven't had a chance. I got 2 different books I'm reading right now, but your books, Team Building from the Bench to the Boardroom, Attitude, the Cornerstone of Leadership, are these available on Amazon for people to grab?
They are. You can just go under my name or the title, and they are available on Amazon.
Yes.
And
then they can also get in touch with your team at coachpatsullivan.com. That's a great way to, if you're interested in having Coach come speak at your businesses or companies. I mean, that's a good way to get in touch with you, correct?
I'd love to. Yes. And that's the best way.
Okay, fantastic.
That's the website. Yep.
Well, Coach, thank you so much for spending time on the Someday Life podcast. I know it's kind of a funny medium now, huh? Like where you can kind of come on to, I mean, podcasts are so big now, and it's just to get your word out there and to get knowing people. It's just amazing how, I mean, I'm 35 years old, but I can tell you 15 years ago, this wasn't a thing, you know?
No. I didn't know what it was. Probably as recent as a year ago. I wasn't sure what a podcast meant. This has been great. Thank you for the homework you did and the questions, Justin, that you had. I thoroughly enjoyed this.
That's awesome. Well, Coach Pat Sullivan, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you go visit coachpatsullivan.com. Check out his books on Amazon. And he's a great follow, somebody you want to connect with. It's been a really cool experience. So thanks again, Coach.
Thank you, Justin.